What's up and welcome back. I'm John Stark back from MovieGuy.com, your favorite blind film critic, and today I'm taking a look at the 20th anniversary of Collateral. This is a movie that I really do hope stands the test of time. I hope this is a movie that is still catching fire today and continues to push forward. I think enough film fans love Collateral. It doesn't feel like it's quite heat for Michael Mann, but it does feel like that there are a significant amount of people who respect Collateral, and even though it doesn't quite have that same level of, you know, um, I would say Heat feels like it's almost like film permanence at this point. Like it feels like somehow, even though it doesn't necessarily have, a Best Picture Oscar win or anything to support it, that there are enough fans behind it that it's going to survive. That 50 years from now, whoever's doing what I'm doing on YouTube, hopefully me, but hello, and welcome back to YouTube. I'm here to talk about Collateral, which I talked about 50 years ago. 70th anniversary. Um, so yeah, hopefully that at least for its 50th anniversary, maybe not 50 years from now, but 50th anniversary of Collateral will still it'll still feel like a thing. But I think this is, in my opinion, like Michael Mann's second best film ever. Like right below Heat, there's Collateral. Like it goes Heat, Collateral. you know. But rewatching this again was a blast. I've seen this movie a bunch of times. I own a physical copy of this, but as you will know if you go blind, most of your physical DVDs do not have audio descriptions. It's not something you think about when you're sighted and you're like, I'm going to buy every DVD ever, and I'm gonna have like the best library. It's gonna be super awesome. And then sight gone, and you're like, oh my Jesus. Hollywood has failed me. um So yeah, the Collateral DVD doesn't have it, but Paramount Plus had Collateral with audio description. So shout out to Paramount Plus. So I did watch this, and it was my first time enjoying this movie with audio description. Probably I'm not gonna say it's not a happy movie, so it's not like I'm watching it over and over and over to make me feel good. Probably my fifth or sixth time watching Collateral though. Um, and going through the beats, I still think this is like a top three Tom Cruise performance. Like, I know that was a really competitive year, and it was the year where actually his co-star won the Best Actor Oscar for Ray. But man, that would have been nice because Tom Cruise has never won a competitive acting Oscar before. So, and it seems like most of the stuff that he chooses doesn't put him in that wheelhouse. He spends a lot of time doing Mission Impossible films. So the couple of times that he has chosen to act and to be in a film, not all of them has he gotten great critical reception for movies like Vanilla Sky and Eyes Wide Shut. Didn't necessarily blow up the box office and blow up critics, But he did get a lot of critical praise for Magnolia. He got critical praise for Jerry Maguire. I think he's really good in A Few Good Men, to be totally honest. I mean, just as a scene partner, I don't think that's his. Just like in Rain Man, he's just really fantastic opposite the person who clearly is the star. So like Tom Cruise supports Jack Nicholson's greatness in Few Good Men. Tom Cruise supports, um, Dustin Hoffman's greatness in Rain Man. But he was great in Born on the 4th of July. He everybody supports him in that movie. He was great in Jerry Maguire. I'm sorry, but he is better than Cuba Gooding Jr. That's ridiculous. Like that is an Oscar win I would take away. I don't care that he's nominated, but win, dude. Like what? I can't even remember what films came out that year, and I can tell you right now, I guarantee you I can find you a better win than Cuba Gooding Jr. from Jerry Maguire. like, um, but yeah, he was iconic in that. So he's had a couple times, but he just Oscars are just a little allergic to Tom Cruise. There was a little bit of buzz that he might get a nomination for Top Gun Maverick, and then it went to Paul Mescal for Aftersun. We were like, ooh. So not Tom Cruise. Collateral is it's got to be one of his best performances. It's a serious performance. He's playing a bad guy, which is unlike him. He usually plays good guys. So he's already playing against type. He's being cast against type here. He's being supported by Jamie Foxx, who's giving a killer, arguably co-lead performance. And some might even say that Foxx is the lead, and that the only reason that Foxx was nominated and supporting for Collateral was because of the fact that he would never have been nominated over Ray. So he just wouldn't have gotten 2 nominations that year. But I think there's a world in which Foxx does essentially what Sebastian Stan is doing this year with A Different Man and The Apprentice. And I mean, he can't not be the lead of those films. So he's just running 2 lead campaigns, and he'll either get nominated for one or he won't. I think there's a way in which Jamie Foxx should have done that, and then Tom Cruise would have been guaranteed the supporting actor nomination. I think Tom Cruise easily would have, if Jamie Foxx had run lead for Collateral, he still would have gotten nominated for supporting. One of those 2 guys was going to get nominated just because of the way the year was and how good this film is. So it's just the actor race in 2004 was insane. As I've commented in several like, what happened? Why were these people not nominated? I mean, we had Paul Giamatti in Sideways. We fucked up. We fucked up with Jim Carrey in Eternal Sunshine. You know what I'm saying? Like, there were some performances that we look back on and we always bitch about. And we're like, why didn't these performances get nominated? That was 2004. 2004 was the year we needed somebody to just wave a magic wand and be like, we've increased the amount of nominees in this category to 10. Because we can certainly justify it, and history will not look bad on this, back at this time and roll their eyes at it. Just like this year, we could probably do it with actress. Honestly, if the actor, think about it, if the Academy announced a 6th nominee for actress and said that there was some sort of like voting thing where the votes were so close that 6 actresses qualified, would you be surprised at this point? Like, no, I would not. I would not be surprised at all. I'd be a little bit like, oh, thank God they can do that. Yeah, there's a fucking beast amount of actresses this year. So, so much so that in one of my critics groups that I voted was gender neutral, and I could vote for 5 lead performances, and I voted for 4 women and 1 guy. So, not really gender neutral at all. But anyway, so Collateral. What's great about it? Jamie Foxx is playing a cab driver who he really knows in Los Angeles like the back of his hand. He's driving around. He's out there on the streets. He picks up Jada Pinkett Smith, who's a lawyer, and they have this sort of cute back and forth conversation about all the streets, and they clearly both know the streets and know the traffic. And they're trying to like outmaneuver each other. And he's like, listen, let me do my thing, and if it's you know, if I win, or if I'm wrong, then ride's free or whatever. They make that deal. So and he's got this picture of like paradise or whatever, like this little postcard thing of like a beach, and ends up swapping, and it becomes a picture of her, and it's cute. Like, it's a cute little beginning, and of course you know that Jada's coming back because she's Jada. So she'll be back. And then his next passenger is Tom Cruise, who plays Vincent, who is a contract killer, but he doesn't know that at first. Jamie Foxx's Max does not know that at first. And so they're driving around, and Vincent is very pleasant at this time. And he goes to his first gig, which, if we're being honest, for Vincent, the contract killer, does not go the way he had planned. I don't think that was the way. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't, in Vincent's mind, That's not the way he wanted his first kill to happen. Because I was thinking about Collateral, like as a movie. I was like, what if, would it make it more interesting if he was able to perform a kill without Max knowing? You know what I'm saying? And then, like, what does that look like? So he goes in, he does something, and then he comes back out. And then it's not to like the second kill that Max is more aware of what's happening. So, basically, yeah, dude falls out from the sky onto the car. Of course, it's one of those glorious movie moments where you're like, of course, it's onto the car. We have to accept. Anytime you watch any movie, there's always something where you have to like, yes, of course, because it's a movie. It would, of course, land on his car. Not next to it, not behind it, around it, near it, on his car. Which I guess the car is still drivable, so they just kind of get the body off and head on out. But obviously Max keeps trying to get away, but he can't because Vincent's like, nope, you're mine. I own you now, and we're gonna drive. And they sort of drive through this whole city, and Max keeps going through these things. There's a fantastic sequence with the jazz musician, which I've seen that thing taken out of context and played just as a great scene. I think that scene's just like singularly on YouTube because it's so great. Where they're just talking jazz with this guy, and you don't know what it is. Like, you don't know what's about to happen in that moment. And you can see Max is letting his guard down because he doesn't think, he's like, this is not a bad guy. This is just a fucking jazz musician, man. So, Vincent seems to really be enjoying himself. And then it just gets dark real fast. And that's such a great scene. Mark Ruffalo is also in this as well. He plays sort of like the lead detective, who's in charge of trying to find the case. But what's really funny about this is the sort of all of the tangential side characters don't matter. They don't. Because this movie telegraphs you the ending in a way where once you realize where you are, you realize how the movie's going to end. But I still don't mind it. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, because it's so interesting. Because when it's mentioned up at the top of the film, Tom Cruise sort of mentions an incidental story that he had heard about Los Angeles, and you're like, well, that's about, you know, like, it's just a thing. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to come back into play. Lots of people just tell stories. You don't know that it's going to mean anything. Like, it just is this is what I know about Los Angeles. And then it comes back around and you're like, well, of course, this is exactly what's going to happen. But when the film ends, it literally just ends. It never bothers to check on, was it Javier Bardem or who's playing the crime boss? Like, it never goes back to him. It never goes back to Mark Ruffalo. Like, it doesn't check on any other characters. Like, literally the movie just kind of ends. Like, with Jamie and Jada just kind of walking away. It doesn't do any... Michael is not interested in catching up with them and doing, like, 1 year later with Jamie and Jada, like, at home, and they have, like, a new baby. And his mom is back with them, and everybody's like, oh, it's happily ever after for them. And, like, Mark Ruffalo gets a promotion, and he's, like, in charge. It doesn't do any of that. It doesn't wrap it up. It's just, like, they just fucking walk away from his dead body. That's the end of the movie. And you're like, I guess Mark Ruffalo figures stuff out, or I guess somebody, I don't know, is, you know, it's, I don't know, who knows? And the weird thing is, because of how Jamie Foxx presents himself, the other dude thinks thinks he's an assassin. So, I mean, Collateral, too, is like, they keep talking about doing Heat 2 because they wrote the book. I mean, there's a real world possibility that they could have done a Collateral 2 where now everybody mistakes Max for being a contract killer because of choices. So, anyway, I really love Collateral. I thought this was an excellent audio description track. As somebody who's seen this movie a bunch of times, I thought the way that it was handled was really well done. There are a lot of, like, visual cues throughout the movie, a lot of Especially like when Max is across in the parking garage and he's looking across and he's trying to call Jada and get her safe, and Tom's running around and Tom's looking and he sees like the little flashing light. It lets you know all that stuff that's in there. Um, all of the stuff about the facial expressions that Jamie Foxx has, like throughout the, because he's always like in some sort of constant state of worry or guilt. That's really great. Whereas Tom Cruise has almost no facial reaction. Uh, even even the sort of when he's being pleasant, he's also just sort of being curt at the same time. Like it's not really he his most charm is when he's talking to the jazz musician. That's like, and then when he first gets in like Max's cab. But there are several scenes like when he goes to visit Jamie Foxx's mom. He really doesn't. At that point, he doesn't have time for the bullshit. So there's no bullshit on his face, you know. Um, so yeah, I think Michael Mann directed an excellent movie. I love the soundtrack to this movie. I just think Collateral is a great example of sort of the old Oscars, run when release dates mattered, when you have a year that is a glutton for film, and then you're like, what do we do? Especially now when we look back on, like I'm looking back on 20 years later, and you're looking back on these movies, and you're like, well, which ones are standing the test of time? And you're like, damn, there are a lot of them, and we didn't necessarily give those films their due, or these performances their due. Um, I mean, for 20 years, people have pointed to Jim Carrey in Eternal Sunshine and been like, that should have gotten there. And Paul Giamatti in Sideways and like, that should have gotten there. But we just don't have the bandwidth to be able to nominate all of them. So they just get sort of under-recognized and left out for other people. But were they left out for the right people is always the question. Sometimes we get myopically into these Oscar bait movies at the end of the year that go nowhere and nobody remembers them and nobody watches them and nobody talks about them later, and they have no impact on film beyond an Oscar season. But then films like Eternal Sunshine and Sideways, Collateral, they all do. Like they still continue to have life 20 years later, 30 years later, 40 years later. Sort of like the same thing with Shawshank Redemption. That movie, sort of when it landed in 1994, it wasn't a huge commercial success. So it kind of limped into the Oscars. Nowadays, quite famously, it was number one on IMDb's top 250 for like years and years. It might still be, but I've seen it. I've seen people come for it. I've seen films come for it over the years, but it seems to somehow always like regain. I don't know if it's currently, if it's definitely can't be lower than two, but yeah, it definitely has become that film that got away. So it's funny how it almost feels like there should be like some other like co-Oscar thing that we do reflectively when we're not in the middle of campaigning, when everybody is takes a breath and we step away and we go, okay, there are no FYC campaigns. I'm not being wined and dined, told what to vote for. What did I really like from this year? You know? And those are the films that should really stand the test. Anyway, I love Collateral. I think it's a fucking perfect movie. It's a great movie. It's a thriller from beginning to end, and excellent performances all around, even from Jada. I'm including Jada. Like, I think this is maybe, I don't know. I'm not. It's if it's not her best performance, it's got to be like top three for her. Just like with Cruise, I think this is one of his top three performances. So mainly it has to do with the fact that he allowed himself to be cast against type, because he so rarely ever plays the villain. And part of what makes it work so well here is you see somebody who's constantly cast as the hero playing a villain. So that's what makes it so brilliant. And why is because the guy who's been fighting for truth and justice for all these years is, oh shit, a contract killer? Okay. So, yeah, an excellent audio description track, and was happy to celebrate the 20th anniversary of Collateral. So check it out. I'm giving Collateral. Ooh, do I want to say it's a desert island? I do. I'm gonna give Collateral A plus. I really love this movie. Like, if I was taking like my little collection of like my favorite films of all time, I'd be taking two Michael Mann movies. I'd be taking Heat and Collateral with me, and he may not be a consistent director all the time, but he does have, man, when that man hits, he hits. He's got a couple in there that are just great movies. The Insider's really good too. But anyway, that's it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing, and I will see you guys on the other side.